Hello, my Aloha tribe, and welcome to the Aloha Perspective, where you get a little bit of something and a whole lot of everything. Happy Friday. It is Friday, and we are here with the last day of Confidence Vampires. I'm all vampires. Yeah, we should do a show on vampires. Just get a bunch of people on here and ask them what their favorite vampires were. But for now, we're just talking about confidence vampires. Now, you may notice a pineapple sticker on my mic, and part of that is because it comes. So this came in a set, right? And I'm not used to these because they're rechargeable, so I never know when they're gonna need to be recharged. I miss my wireless mic at home. I know it sounds weird, and I always have to, you know, put it through. Good morning, Muddy. I'm sorry I'm a little late, guys. Um, yeah, I just straight out got distracted. So, anyways, confidence vampires and breaking free. So anyways, this is how I mark the one that hasn't been charged yet. So I just don't want to peel it off and on it'll lose its stick. But hey, it is the Aloha Perspective, and it's a pineapple, so deal with it. And I got one here, so you know um so anyways, so I'll tell you, you know what, at the end I'll tell you the story about this pineapple. Lord have mercy. And I also promised to pull an oracle card. So for the Love of the Dragons oracle, but I'm going to pull it last. I already shuffled. I haven't looked at it, and I'm really curious to see if it'll tie in any way to this reading. But a lot of times in the past, I've done Oracle Fridays. It's a little difficult right now because I'm not going to be home until next week, and so all my cards are there. So I may go back to Oracle Friday. Um, Again, because people really loved it, people really enjoyed it, and it was kind of fun. It's for entertainment purposes only. It's entertainment purposes only advice. It is not um me telling you what to do or spirit telling you what to do. So that's a whole different thing. All right, so let's get into this. Confidence vampires, breaking free from the bite. Recognizing confidence vampires is powerful, but what's next? You don't necessarily need to banish these people from your life, though sometimes that's the right choice. I added, hi, narcissist. Instead, and let's get to it, set clear boundaries about what kinds of interactions you'll accept, limit your exposure to those who constantly drain your energy, seek balance by spending time with confidence boosters who celebrate your creative, authentic self. Practice self validation rather than seeking approval from chronic critics, and name the behavior when it happens that. Wait, what? Oh, name the behavior when it happens that felt like criticism disguised as advice. But I added a note here, but we're going to go back over these, okay? It says, remember your self esteem is too valuable to leave unprotected. The people who truly deserve a place in your life will help it flourish, not feed it while it withers. I seriously need to write better sometimes. Okay, so, and again, this came from Karma Gaia. I will put, um, I think I have the link. Yeah, I do have the link because I read off of it yesterday. I'll put the link in the comments so you guys can find it, okay? In the comments on Facebook Live. So you have to go there to find it. So yeah, I'll put it in there. But I think a lot of my work is going to be fed through Karma Gaia. I should just I should just ask them, hey, can I use your stuff for my show? It's like I always give you credit because they have some really good stuff, and it's not everybody wants to go through and read everything. So I just try to give my take on it and where I'm coming from. And I try to be relatable. I'm not trying to be your spotlight stealer or your eternal victim. I am sharing my experiences. And again, I share my story to help other people heal theirs because it can be difficult and there can be a lot of shame involved. I had a really great conversation with a sibling yesterday about, something I was writing in the book. And I was like, should I talk about this? And I said, I've been carrying this my whole life and it wasn't mine solely to carry, and she's all, good girl. And then, I'm not a dog, but, older sibling is older sibling. So she's like, good girl. She's like, I'm glad you finally figured that out. But I did. I did. And I was very, very proud of myself. That's right. You know what? It's okay to pat yourself on the back. You don't have to ask other people to do it. Okay. That's just, don't attention seek. You have to learn to give yourself what you need to fill your cup. Okay, all the other stuff, that should be the bonus. But you have to learn what fills your heart, what fills your soul, what brings you joy. All right. So I also had some side notes in there, and we'll get to those last. So let's get to this. Set clear boundaries about what kinds of interactions you'll accept. What kind of actions are you willing to interactions are you willing to accept? All right. I'm going to cross these out because for some reason I didn't skip lines. So, you know, Shelly Marie, Shelly Marie. So again, set clear boundaries about what kinds of interactions you'll accept. Um, I feel bad that I keep using my one friend as an example, but fortunately, I don't think she watches this show because she might recognize it. But I had to set clear boundaries, and I did, and it felt like it worked. It felt like it did its job. Like I said, we're still friends to this day. In fact, she's called me twice, and I need to call her back because I keep forgetting. Every time she calls, I'm indisposed. So, but yeah, so there's boundaries that you're allowed to set. Now, it says up here you don't necessarily need to banish these people from your life. When I say, it says though sometimes it is the right choice. I put high narcissist because, like I said, that is going to be the confidence vampire that, in my personal opinion, I'm not a therapist. I'm not a trained psychologist. I am nothing more than a human being that has had to deal with all types of people throughout my life. And as you know, that as I confessed yesterday, I am a recovering number 7. I'm a recovering armchair psychologist. So I mean, act like I have one, but I'm not. But but no, the reason I say that, when I said high narcissist, when I added that, was because, like I said, most of the time, if you come across someone who's a confidence vampire, it is probably rarely going to be a narcissist. And sometimes a narcissist, it's a fine line you're walking because sometimes the narcissist isn't your standard. Well, everything's about me. For example, but she was now this girl was kind of a delightful narcissist. I don't think she realized. I mean, she borderline confidence in narcissist. I mean, she mixed them both, and she took it in a jar, shook it up, and just poured it all over her like fairy dust. But her name was Princess Wright. I shit you not, that was her name. And I know I probably shouldn't have said that, but I mean, I don't even know how to spell the last name. But she was in older siblings HR class or certification course, and HR specialist certification course, and they were all going to Subway for lunch, but sibling decided she was going to be the one to make the run. So she's collecting everybody's orders, everybody's money, and she gets to Princess, and Princess says, "Well, why do you need money?" And she's all, "Well, I have to buy it." And she's like, "Well, aren't you going to buy it for me?" And it's just kind of like, wow. When sibling told me this story, it's like, oh my god. But and there was another story about her, and I can't remember what it was, but I'm gonna have to remember it. Or I wish sibling was on because sibling remembers, because we were giggling. We weren't laughing at her. We were actually laughing with her because it was it was narcissistic behavior, but it was adorable narcissistic behavior. She just didn't know. I mean, I think truly she typified the only child, if she was an only child, or the baby of the family. So who knows? Who knows? But or she could have been the only girl in the family. But yeah, she was mama and daddy's girl, which was in it. Like I said, I mean, she was. I never met her person. I met her once, I think, but sibling adored her, and sibling is generally a good judge of character. I just don't think she realized that she was like that. But so my friend, so Sammy says, I'm pretty sure the person I know who fits a lot of these traits is a narcissist. And that's just it. That's what I was getting to. Good morning, Allie. Hi. So it's funny because I was on Facebook watching a different friend who lives in England, and that's why I ran late, because she had all these little clips of her village, and I was just like, oh my god, that is just amazing. So anyways, so what was I saying? Oh, I totally forgot. But oh, Sammy said that she, the person she knows who fits a lot of the traits, because she has been sharing. Sammy has been sharing. Yeah, I know this person, and it's all the same person. So the question we have to ask is: are they an accidental narcissist or an actual narcissist? Is there something in their past that has hurt them, that has made them so insecure that they need to be this particular confidence vampire? I mean, we talked about the different kinds of confidence vampires. There was the constant critic, the spotlight stealer, the backhanded complimenter, the eternal victim, the passive diminisher, the conditional supporter, and the armchair psychologist. So we have to wonder, because like I said, when it came to number 7, the armchair psychologist, um, that tended to be me. And the reason I say that it tended to be me was because there was so much in me broken and so much that needed to be fixed. But I didn't know how to do it. And I was afraid to really kind of look in there to do it. So I tried to fix everybody else around me. And unfortunately, when it comes to people like that, I have someone um, in my large circle that I know is a narcissist. And to be fair to the situation, because it's a very delicate one, to be honest with you. This person, I don't think they're the kind of narcissist we normally think about. I think they're the person that has had so much trauma in their own life that they think it's only happened to them. And so they don't know how to deal with it, they don't know how to heal it, and then they take it out on everybody else. And I've done that. I told you, older sibling was very, very good at helping me through. Okay, so Allie was saying her son displays these tendencies towards her all the time. And yeah, and that's just it. It's like we have to ask ourselves why. Sometimes we have to bottom line it. Why do you treat me this way? And so then I circle back to the friend that I told you guys about. Um, if we broke it down into what we think a narcissist is versus the actual narcissism, we have that in self-love, right? Narcissism is having an excessive or erotic interest in oneself or personal appearance, or I'm sorry, physical appearance. So, and it's not necessarily an erotic, interest. I mean, that feels very Freud to me, very Freud. It's like, dude, keep it in your pants, all right? But that's why I love Carl Jung so much, because Carl Jung, he kind of ran in different directions with healing. And it wasn't just what he thought people might have been going through. I don't know a lot about Freud's past. I don't know about his childhood, but Carl Jung was very, very open about his. And he was very, very open about, the traumas he struggled. And I think it was his mom who had some mental health issues. I think. Don't quote me on that because, I mean, I've read a lot of stuff about him, but it's like when you start getting into the other stuff and more of his approaches to things, you start forgetting about where a lot of this was born from. And Carl Jung knew what he needed to do to heal himself. So he didn't just come up with something and say, oh, it's about this. Now, that's no offense to Freud, because Freud, he is the or grandfather of psychology, of modern psychology. So, we need to thank him for putting it on the map, even though it's still very stigmatized, which, in future episodes, we will talk about mental health. But Jung knew how to go deep. So, while we sit here and say narcissism is having an excessive or erotic interest in oneself or physical appearance, that's the common term for it. Now, when we think of narcissists, we think of people who just care about themselves and put themselves before everybody else, which I think is a different type of narcissism. I'm not labeling it anything different. I'm just giving you my opinion, in my humble opinion of what I think. Sorry if you see smoke, it's because I have incense going. But I do. I think there's that fine line. So with the two of you, you have to ask yourselves. And now, Allie, I'm not saying you've done anything to make your son feel this way. A lot of times, children misinterpret things. You know, I had a very difficult relationship with my mom growing up, but in my adult years, we were like best friends. And my dad used to always say that one day you two are just going to look back and you're going to laugh, and he's all, but I'm keeping it all up here to remind you, because I don't want you to say, no, it was always great. But no, I knew I had a difficult relationship with my mom. It was just hard to admit because, as we talked about yesterday, she grew up in a different era. She was, well, I shouldn't say that she grew up in a different era. She was raised by someone in a different era. So, Jeff, good morning. Good morning, good morning, good morning. How are you? Um, it's my buddy Jeff. So, anyways, sorry, I don't want to lose track, but I'll read your comment after because I'm. If I have ADD, it's kicking in hard today. But oh yeah, and not to be TMI, but Sammy will get it because we talked about this yesterday. I was going to do a show next week about menopause, but I'm not there yet. If you get if you catch my drift. But anyway, so I'm not putting it on anybody. Okay, I'm not saying it's your fault, Allie. I'm not saying it's your son's fault. Sometimes we have to confront the issue. Why? Ask him, why do you treat me this way? Because sometimes they don't realize it. um I have someone I know who finally confronted a parent and said, look, this and this. And, this parent was like, usually they fight back. Usually they do this, they do that, but they've been through a lot. There's been a lot that's happened in my circle of people. And they're just like, you're right. You're right. Now, I'm not saying that's your situation. Sometimes people don't understand what other people are going through. Allie mentioned the other day about fibromyalgia, which is chronic pain. Chronic pain is a bitch. Okay, it doesn't matter what level of chronic pain you land under. After they all their pain levels all start at about a 10, in my personal opinion. Fibro, their lowest may start at about an 8. CRPS, theirs starts at about an 11 on a scale of 1 to 10. So, because I do have other friends that have fibro as well. And, but it's chronic pain is chronic pain. And you don't know when you're going to flare. You don't know what's going to cause it. You could bump into a cabinet and it could send you into a flare. And people don't understand this. They think that if you cancel on them at the last minute, that, you're just, you know, they get attitude and they get behavior. And in fact, I'm going to talk about that in a second, um, because I really do think a lot of this goes together with these confidence vampires. These are people that just, it should be a number 8. People that just don't get it, right? People that just don't get it and make you feel bad. So they're kind of the person that gives you the backhanded compliment, or makes themselves the eternal victim, or even worse, the passive diminisher, right? We talked about the passive diminisher yesterday, which was the person that says, oh, you're overreacting. And Allie, does that feel like it fits your son? Oh, you're overreacting, it can't be that bad. I'm just curious because I've seen, we've talked just a little, and I don't want to say anything more on that without your permission, but, um, and I've seen some posts, but how we treat people, it's like Sammy and I were talking about the other day, it all rolls back to do unto others the way you want them to do unto you. And that's the hard part, I think, as a parent. I mean, I've never been a parent, but I have been privy to parenting as an aunt. Okay. And I know I was born an only child, but in my family, and I'm sure other families, but I know in the Hawaiian culture, everybody, the Polynesian culture, everybody's auntie and uncle. Everybody's auntie and uncle. In fact, I saw the funniest video the other day, just a sidebar really quick. If, they're all, well, who's this? Who's that? It's just auntie or uncle. It's just auntie or uncle. So, see, yes. So her son sounds like a passive diminisher. He doesn't get mental health. He doesn't get fibro. So he doesn't understand the two things that are really upending your life. And that's the difficult part. So, he sounds more like an eternal victim. He sounds more like an eternal victim, like, oh, well, you're just doing all this to me on purpose, because, he doesn't, and a lot of times I think people just don't want to acknowledge somebody else's mental health. I think my parents had trouble acknowledging my mental health, And this is just my opinion, because when my dad and I talked about it later, he's all, well, I don't think you get that from me. Nobody wants to be the one associated with it, right? Nobody wants to be the one that's the reason you have it. Well, no, my parents may or may not have had depression. I don't know. They were raised by, a different generation where you keep everything quiet, right? And we were kind of raised like that. But, as Gen Xers, we're kind of like, fuck that. I'm just going to tell you what I think. All right. I'm just going to be out there and I'm going to share this and I'm going to share it with other people because you know what, damn it? I want people to heal. So, okay. So she says his answer to everything is to get a job, exercise more, and get over herself. Yeah, he really doesn't get fibro. Fibromyalgia is a chronic pain. It's chronic pain. And people don't understand that you can't sit for a long time, you can't stand for a long time. Sometimes doing things is just difficult for older, when you flare. For sibling, what I think, now I don't know if this is the case with fibro, but I know with CRPS or RSD, whichever you want to call it, when she flares, it's basically like a house on fire. I mean, she can't, even wearing clothes hurts. So it's hard for her because, she has silk pajamas so that when she does flare, she just changes into those and it's a little bit softer. But I mean, even the poor cats, because, kitties and puppies and dogs and all and cats, um, they just want to love you, right? When you're hurting, but she can't even have them on her because it hurts so much. And I don't know, I haven't talked to my friend that has fibro in a while, so I'm not sure if that's something you go through as well, but I do realize that fibromyalgia is chronic pain. So, um, oh, see, and Sammy too. So anyways, you know, he also sounds like an armchair psychologist. Like, well, you need to do this, you need to do that, you need to do this. The funniest thing, my dad didn't understand mental health when we sat there and talked. He's like, well, I'm really trying to understand this, but I don't understand it because I don't go through it. Now, it turns out it actually runs on both sides of my family, but it doesn't mean that everyone's going to get it. Okay. And if they get it, it may be mild enough or they know how to handle it. For me, I do have a chemical imbalance. I don't care if anybody thinks it's not a real thing. It is a real thing. If it wasn't a real thing, the meds wouldn't help. All right. Because I have been off of them and I have been on them. And it's like, I know. And when my body metabolizes that, I switch back to my other one. I have two that go hand in hand. They're like my twins. They keep the world safe from me. So, and I'm not ashamed to say I'm on them. I mean, I'm actually proud of the fact that I figured it all out and that sibling helped me figure it all out so that I can live a pretty balanced life. But the one thing that really made my dad think about it was, I said, let me put it this way. I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy. I would not wish this on my worst enemy. And he's all, wow, it gets that bad. And I'm like, yeah. And I said, it does. Because it's like, it's fighting myself. And then when people don't understand, it's like fighting everybody else. And you don't know what to do. It becomes so difficult because you feel like you have to explain yourself to everybody. Well, you shouldn't have to. People just need to accept you for who you are. They need to accept that, just because you have fibromyalgia and mental health issues doesn't mean your son's going to get it. So he needs to get over himself. Okay. He needs to exercise more to get out his aggression for whatever reason he's angry with you. So, okay. So on days where I try to do the things, he seems to think that if I can do it one day, I can do it every day. Okay. So I am going to put myself in your son's shoes now. I used to do this to older sibling. I'm all like, well, how come you'll push yourself for so and so, but when I ask you to do something, you can't do it? Well, sibling and I are roommates, okay? We have lived together forever, and if neither one of us ever finds a man, if we don't find one, we're gonna live together forever. So I mean, that I'm just trying to be humorous here because it is difficult, but here's the difference. I used to be that way. Why can't you push yourself for me when I want to, when I want us to do stuff, because I don't want to just sit here and do nothing. And it got really hard after Sissy Joe passed, because Sissy Joe and I and sibling would we would do a lot of stuff together. But when older sibling was hurting, Sissy Joe and I would go off and do stuff. So it wasn't really staying in the house. But you know weather can cause this, the shift in weather, the humidity, the heat. Sometimes there's so many different factors to having chronic pain that people really don't get it, and it is the hardest thing in the world to explain. At the end of this, I'm going to share a story because I really want to get through these. So let's get through these really quick. But I have been in your son's shoes, and I will tell you, he is wrong. He is wrong. And he needs to do what I did. He needs to figure out, or he needs to understand that you are not like everybody else, that you hurt, that you struggle. And having fibromyalgia, having chronic pain, it does double time on your mental health, because you want to get out there, you want to be out there with everybody else, you want to have fun with your kids. And I don't know if you have grandkids or not, but you want to go out and have fun with all these people, and everybody's blaming you and getting mad because you can't. I know somebody who is kind of upset with my well, I'm just going to say it. I have a cousin who's mad at my dad, and I don't know if they're still mad at my dad, but they're all like, oh, well, he can go do this, he can go do that, but he couldn't do this. I'm tired of inviting him to things. I'm tired, and I hate exposing them like this, because I love this person. I love this person to bits, but my dad, it turns out, has been going super downhill for the last 2 years because he had rheumatoid arthritis, and that was only recently diagnosed. It was only recently diagnosed, like within a month. At first, they thought it was polymyalgia rheumatica, which was basically many muscles rheumatica. And sorry guys, my nose just started running. And so and so the ER doctor somebody finally paid attention to what he was saying. She did some tests, and and she found that, got him started on a different regimen, which almost within 3 days he was feeling better. And then he finally got in to see the rheumatologist. She had him do all kinds of blood tests, x-rays, blah blah blah. Then she finally just straight out diagnosed him with rheumatoid arthritis. But there were times that he had to push himself. And a lot of people couldn't understand. Well, I don't understand how he can go do this. I don't understand how he can do that. Well, here's the thing. When he hangs out with my other cousin, it's literally a mile away from home. It's not driving out somewhere. It's not, and my dad's not the kind of person that likes when people just show up at his door. You got to call. Even I have to call before I come down. Okay, he says, you're always welcome. And I have a key. I've always had a key. But it's like, you're always welcome, but just let me know first, because sometimes my dad's retired. Sometimes he is just not ready to receive people. I mean, it's not the movies, guys. We don't walk around, we don't dress up in our suit and ties and our dresses and walk around the house all day like that. No, sometimes it's just a straight out jammy day. And if you live by yourself, maybe it's a full on underwear day. I don't know. I've never lived by myself, so that has never happened. But I am going to try it while sibling is out of town. So, because I'll be alone with the cats. So, anyways, just, if you can, oh yeah, I'll share the story at the end. Maybe this will help. I don't know if it'll help, but maybe it'll help. So anyways, let's get to the next one. Limit your exposure to those who constantly drain your energy. I think that one speaks for itself. Yeah. Limit your exposure to those who constantly drain your energy. I know it can be hard. I have a friend, and I don't even know where we stand anymore. So, yeah, I'll be honest with you. I'm with my dad too. Call before you come over. That's how I was raised, and I know sometimes people might just be in the neighborhood, but still say, hey, I'm in the neighborhood. Do you mind if I pop by? Well, I'd rather you not. Well, but do you want to meet for coffee? Or do you want to go out and this, that, or the other? But I mean, my dad's also 79 years old. I mean, the guy, I mean, he doesn't have to get up and go that he used to. That's what he says. I personally disagree. Since he's been on the new meds for for his arthritis. He's like dad again. He is so like dad again, minus the left eye, because that's a story in itself. But anyways, seek balance, spending time with confidence boosters who celebrate your authentic self. So Allie, if you ever have a run-in with your son and he has just left you feeling drained, he's left you feeling shitty and poorly about yourself, IM me, DM me. Okay, girl, just straight up DM me, DM Paula, DM one of us, because we get it, right? We have these people in our family that just don't understand. Now, I will say this, the cousin I was talking about, I do love her to death. And I've tried to explain everything. And, we have talked, because even I misunderstood my dad. I was like, I literally had prepared myself in the last 3.5 months before they diagnosed my dad. I had to prepare myself. And I told him, I said, I really did not think you were going to make it out of this. I didn't know. But I would get mad at him. Get up. You can do this. You can do that. And I had to apologize to him. And that was it. I was on the front lines with him this whole time, so I had a front row seat to people figuring out what was wrong with him. But I wasn't always easy on him either, you know. And I think it did help. I think these last 3.5 months have helped our relationship, though. I know I do need to visit more, but I think he also realizes that even though I live in another county, sometimes I do want to be invited to things. It's fun hanging out with my dad. So there's those things, but yeah, I I don't have a problem. I used to have a problem backpedaling, but I don't anymore, because I am just so grateful that he is better now. But yeah, I at first didn't handle it well. And I think part of the reason I didn't handle it well either, it's my dad. It's my dad. And so, you don't want to see people struggling, and unfortunately some people don't handle it well. Some people will just go in the opposite direction and be complete dickheads, and I'm not saying that my cousin was. I'm just saying other people, they treat people poorly. Okay, I'm kind of talking about Allie's kid. So no offense, Allie, no offense. But yeah, she's a really good friend of mine, and I don't like the fact that her son treats her that way, because, I know somebody with chronic pain, and I do struggle with my own mental health. So, you know, mm, again, it's not something I'd wish on my worst enemy. Well, but anyways, so seek balance with people, who will boost you. So yeah, feel free to reach out. Practice self-validation rather than seeking approval from chronic critics. I'm going to say it again. You have to find inside, inside. She's he's a total idiot sometimes. Yeah. So there could be a lot of reasons. It could be the shadow thing. Maybe it's hard for him to accept seeing his mom like this. And so instead of being supportive, he just goes in the opposite direction. It's hard to say. I think that's a conversation you two really have to sit down and talk and try to have, even if you have to have a mediator there, and just say, look, I really want to talk this out with you. I don't know if it'll work or not. It may make it better. It may make it worse. But at some point, as the mom, you just need to sit his ass down and tell him, look, do you really think I like living like this? I told my dad that too. I said, do you really think I like having mental health issues? Do you think I like having a dinged up mental health? Do you think I like running around with the tile of major depressive disorder hanging over my head? You say that to people and they just automatically think you're boring and that you're lame and that you're Eeyore. And Eeyore was cute. But no, I'm more like Tigger. I really am. I'm more like Tigger and a little bit of Winnie the Pooh and sometimes Piglet and on occasion Owl. But come on, we don't ask for these things to happen to us. They happen to us. And maybe that's the lesson that needs to be learned. Maybe he just needs to have his ass sat down and say, you know what? Tie him to a chair if you have to, and just say, look, you're going to listen, and whether you like it or not, you're going to hear me, because I need you to know this. So, and like I said, it could go one or two ways. But it could also just be that he might not know how to deal with it, and that may not be in his normal wheelhouse. So instead of admitting he doesn't know how to deal with it, he just you know I used to be an Eeyore, and I did shadow work, and shadow work was very hard. But as uncomfortable as shadow work was, again, I stand by this, guys. It saved my life. aside from sibling, I know lots of things I say saved my life, but it really did. I mean, it changed. I shouldn't say saved my life. It changed my life because I stopped looking for approval from chronic critics. I was talking to a sibling yesterday and I was driving somewhere and I told her, I said, I said, it's like I hit 50 and I just stopped giving a shit. Like legit, about what people thought about me. It's like I could care less. Okay, if I want to wear that outfit, I'm going to wear that outfit. If, I want to, I don't know, whatever it is. I can't remember what we were talking about, but it's like, yeah, I said, it's like I turned 50 and I just stopped caring about what other people thought. It's just kind of like, yeah, whatever. You can have your opinion, but it's just your opinion, and I'm not going to let it bother me anymore. And I don't think it's because I turned 50. I think it's because I did so much work in my 40s that in my 50s now, because I'm 52, it's finally, I'm finally reaping the benefits of all this work I've done. I mean, all the work I've done. And I did the shadow work right before I turned 50. And I mean, like the really intense shadow work. And I'm telling you, it was wild. I even had therapy. I mean, I started therapy when I turned 50 because I thought, wow. And not because I was depressed, but because I felt so stuck. I felt stuck between being this person who had trauma, who did, and that person that was healed. And I didn't know how to mix the two. There was that, I was stuck in that gray area, you know. And it turns out for me, a lot of that was I just didn't know how to feel joy all the time because I was so used to living in my trauma and doing the fake it till you make it, right? That when I did the happy go lucky stuff, I wasn't sure. It's like, am I faking it or is it real? So this is why we need to surround ourselves with people who will lift us, all right? And that's why we need to stop seeking validation from outside sources. You have to fill your own cup with your own joy. Do things that bring you joy. Do things that make you happy. Uh, you know, watch your favorite show, drink your favorite tea, have a glass of wine if you're into that. I mean, I just say that because some people don't drink. Um, I recently got, um, oh, it's over there. I recently got two very unnecessary things that I don't need. They're pocket journals. And well, this one's for donuts, which I have not done yet, but the other one was for beer. And to be honest with you, it's like it kind of started out as a joke, but now when I go to happy hour, it's like, yeah, I finish with a Guinness, but I start with something else. Now, you may think, well, that's kind of dumb, but it's not. It's become kind of a hobby now to move through these different things when I go out with people instead of just doing the same thing over and over and over again. And it has brought me a different kind of joy, not because it's alcohol, but because it's brought me a different kind of joy. It's like people who are sommeliers, right? These are the wine connoisseurs of the world. They know, they sniff, they taste, they sip, they spit, all this stuff. And they could tell you everything about that beer, or I mean, that wine, you know? And, and it's amazing, but that's their passion. So find something you're passionate about, do something that brings you joy. And because that's where we need to find the self validation. Do the affirmations in the mirror until you feel it in your soul. Okay, when you feel it in your soul, that's the best. Because then you know that your heart is really hearing you, not just your brain. I mean, don't be a robot and go, I matter, I matter, I matter, I matter, I matter. No, just go, I matter. I am enough. I am enough. Things like that, bring yourself joy. And let's see, the next one, name the behavior when it happens. Yeah, see, there you go, Allie. That felt like criticism disguised as advice. If your son does that, I would just call him out on it. You know, don't let him run roughshod over you. First of all, you're the mom. And I know a lot of times, it does come with a double-edged sword because we don't, I don't know, like I said, I don't know if you have grandkids or not, but uh, I don't know if there's a threat because sometimes kids will threaten, well, I don't want, I'm not going to let you see the kids. And for bad reasons. I know people who have withheld children for very good reasons. But I also know people who have withheld children just to be spiteful. And so if that's something you're dealing with, then, I get it. And maybe you and I can talk one time and try to figure out a balance that, maybe your son can understand. But like I said, I am going to get to the story about sibling at the end because I really want to share that because it could also help. So again, remember your self-esteem is too valuable to leave unprotected. The people who truly deserve a place in your life will help it flourish, not feed on it while it withers. I had a friend whose daughter was a complete effing narcissist. Um, and it turns out she was this way because she blamed her mother for a lot of what happened in her childhood when she didn't realize, and she revered her father, she thought he was great. Then she finally met him and she realized why her mother was trying to protect her from him and why they were kind of hiding from him. So, because, yeah, not a good guy, not a good guy. And even she said that. She's like, "Oh, mom, I totally get it." And then, she went to hang out with her husband's family. And she's like, "Whoa, mom." And they started really repairing their relationship. But then, she would still get a little combative because her mom was dying. We lost my friend last June, and she had a kidney transplant, but unfortunately, it didn't it didn't work. Um, and yeah, and then and so then at the funeral, like my other friend and I, who had heard years and years worth of just tears and wishing that her daughter saw her more, would just listen to this girl talk about, "Oh, I've always loved my mom," and it felt, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe she thought she did. Maybe she did. I don't know. I shouldn't be the one to judge, but I saw what my friend went through, and it was hard because a lot of times she just wouldn't say anything because she wanted to see her grandkids. So if you're watching this and you're one of those people that, keep your grandkids from your parents for all the wrong reasons, stop it. Don't use your children to punish your parents. Hold on one second. Yes? No, I'm doing my show. Huh? I'm doing my show. Yeah, go ahead. What do you need? Okay, you're going to be on the TV. What is that? Oh, you printed it. Oh, thank you. Yay. Okay. That was my dad. So anyways, yeah, sorry. I needed to print that so I can go return my stuff. But anyways, so yeah, I just, you know, I forgot what I was saying. So that kind of threw me. But anyways, yeah, just try to find all the I'll tell him he just left. Let's see. Um, you have multiple Eeyores upstairs. Okay. Oh, okay. Ladies, I would tell him both of that. Both I will tell him you both said hello. So, from England and Georgia, from Georgia. So, sorry, Sammy. The weirdest thing is, I'm like Sissy Joe, right? You put me in the South and I pick up the accent really easily. And I don't know what it is about it because I was in England for 10 days, never picked up the accent. Of course, I was pretty much a lone hold. Yeah, but no, even when I was with my friends, I never picked up the accent. But here's my side notes. You can't fix the problem without acknowledging it. So there you go. You can't fix the problem without acknowledging it. Um, yeah. Oh, that's what I was saying. I do understand. I've had situations where I've known people that have kind of withheld the grandkids from the grandparents because the grandparents had very severe behavior issues that needed to be rectified before she would expose young children to them again. So, you know, um, mm, but there is that fine line. Okay, so uh you should hear how I pick up the deep South accents. Well, you already have a good start with it. So one time, okay, so Sammy and I rarely talk on the phone. We usually text or we're online or on Facebook. We've known each other for almost 20 years, have not met in person. Actually, we've known each other about 20 years, have not met in person. And one time she had to call me about a cat. And I was like, oh my God, who is this? Who is this? I was like, oh my gosh. She reminded me of Joanne so much. It was just kind of like, I just loved listening to the accent, but woo, girl, if that is not a deep accent, then I have got to hear a deep accent. So, but one year, this just seems to be a Friday free for all at this point. One year, my grandma, my uncle Sam, yes, I had an uncle Sam, Salvatore, my uncle Salvatore. He grew up in Hawaii, but he met a woman on his travels and ended up living in West Virginia. So, anyways, I went. So my grandma took my cousin and I to West Virginia for a week. the rest of the summer. Oh, my stars, bless your heart. Well, of course, I didn't realize that bless your heart is actually not a compliment. It is kind of a backhanded compliment. I recently learned that, and I was like, oh, I had no idea, you know? So, whoops. But, anyways, and also it's through the process of letting go that we create space for growth and transformation. So, do the shadow work, guys. If you are seeking validation in other people, do the shadow work. You know, it's nice to get validation, it's nice to get compliments, it's nice to get all those things, but we need to not fish for them. We need to be able to love ourselves enough, to have that self-love. Remember, self-love is a desired trait. Okay, so, and to me, there's all different. Like, the narcissism umbrella is wide and expanse. You have your straight out typical narcissists who just love themselves. Like, if you ever saw American Psycho, Patrick Bateman was the typical narcissist and also a psychopathic serial killer. But no, that's definitely 100% a narcissist. Just nobody, somebody who's just all about me, 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 me. And then to me, there's the other ones that just make everything about themselves because they've kind of victimized themselves. They've made themselves the eternal victim. Oh, well, you don't spend enough time with me, or, how come you could do it on this day and you didn't do that day? So one of my suggestions that I tell sibling, if you know you're going to do something the next day with some people, don't do anything the day before. Let people know that you need at least a day's advance because you don't know how you're going to feel. You don't. You don't know how things are going to go for you. So those are some of the things that we can do to set those boundaries with the confidence vampire. So let's see. I need to learn how to do shadow work properly. Is there a book you could recommend? I didn't use a book, but I'm going to send you the link to an article that actually helped me with my shadow work. However, Carl Jung, Jung, may have put out a book about shadow work. I've only read his biographies and some of the other not experiments, but some of the other, I guess they're experiments, things that he tried. But he is really the father of shadow work. And like I said, if you're going to do shadow work, make sure you have a support system. If you don't want to go to therapy or can't afford therapy, make sure you have somebody, because shadow work is about getting uncomfortable fast. And then also, Allie, last week and the week before, I did a bunch of shows on shadow work, and I did go over each one of the things that are in the article if you want to check that out as well. So, it's not for the faint of heart. I'm not trying to scare anyone. And as I said, I'm not trying to scare anyone away from doing shadow work, but you need to get comfortable being uncomfortable, because shadow work is going to dig into the deepest parts of yourself that you forgot were there, that you have pushed down, suppressed, and everything. And, whether it's trauma, whether it's current things. So, it's asking you basically to be very honest with yourself, to just, look deep and say what needs to be healed, but also to show yourself compassion and empathy, and if necessary, forgiveness. And that's not, doesn't mean you did anything wrong. It could be things that you have done to yourself that you didn't realize you had been doing. So we have that with the confidence vampires. Now, I promised I'd share a story, and then we're going to get to the call. This is why I put the pineapple on that one, because the other one died. All right, can you guys hear me now? All right, there we go. So, did I turn it on? Yeah, I turned it on. All right. So, anyways, sorry guys, the story of older sibling. So, older sibling is not a person who likes to ask for help. I can attribute it, at least for her and I, to being only children. Being raised only children, because a lot of times you have to do things on your own. You have to do things for yourself because there's no one else around. Or maybe you just don't want to bother anyone because they might be doing something. So you become very, and I'm not saying people who have siblings aren't self-sufficient. I'm sure, I know they are. I have parents. My father is the oldest of 8. My mom is the youngest of 3. So, they're siblings, and they had step siblings and half siblings. So, you know, I get it. And my mom was very, very self sufficient. She was just do it yourself. And she was the baby. And my dad obviously being the oldest, he had to learn how to do things too. So, but for me, that's why. So older sibling she had a tooth, an infected tooth. And it was a Friday afternoon. Dentist couldn't see her. Dentist tells her, go to the ER, and see if they will give you some antibiotics until you can come in on Monday. So she goes to the ER, but it's about 100 degrees outside. Now, the hospital is just around the corner, the ER, from our house. It's not that far. It's a very tiny local hospital. So she decides, in her infinite wisdom, to walk there instead of asking our neighbor to drive her over because she was RSDing so bad she couldn't drive. She calls me at work, tells me, hey, blah, blah. I tell my boss, I'm like, I'm sorry, I got to go. Older siblings going to the ER. So I leave. I meet her there. And the doctor who helped her, and you see my teeth are clenched. I wanted to punch this mofo in the face harder than and I'm not a violent person. I may talk big, but I'm not a violent person. The first thing he says to her, because like I said, she's flaring, so she's bright red. It's 100 degrees outside. This fool decided, I called her that, okay? So this is nothing new. Decides to walk there, and she's sweating. She's a little disheveled because it's so hot outside, and because she's hurting. First thing he says to her, he looks at her, I'm not giving you any drugs. And I'm sitting there like, and sibling wouldn't let me talk. And she's all, well, I'm not here for that. She's all, I have an infected tooth. My doctor told me to come here. He's all, we'll go to the dentist. And she's all, he's the one that sent me here because they can't get me in since Friday afternoon. And he's all, well, I'm not giving you any drugs. She's all, like, I'm not asking for any drugs. She's all, I have, she's all, I have RSD. I'm already on pain meds, and she's already reluctant to take those. Sibling is on a daily pain med, and she has breakthrough meds, which she will not take because her mom was an alcoholic. So addiction is very, very, her mom was a recovered alcoholic. All right. I want to make that very clear because Mom Barbara was awesome. No matter what, whether you're recovering or not, but, I don't want to throw her under the bus, but siblings very open with that. And I'm allowed to share that. So, but yeah, so she's very, very keen on the addiction part. She panics about it. She worries about it. When they first put her on the daily pain med, she's like, oh, and they're all like, this is the only way you're going to get through every day. And sometimes barely. And I told her, I said, look, just remember, your body might be addicted, but your brain's not. Okay. Because I said, when you go into remission and it's time to wean you off, you're going to do great. Okay. We'll just wean you off. And because she doesn't like to, because she's very, very aware of it. But yeah, Sammy's all, oh no, he didn't. Oh yes, he did. Oh yes, that motherfucker did. Excuse my language, guys. I'm sorry if there's any kids watching that. That's how passionate I feel about this. I was livid. And I was sitting in that damn room listening to him talk to her like she was, just off the street trying to drug hunt. And I'm not putting those people down either because I can't even imagine what that kind of addiction is like. But even those people deserve compassion and empathy because as hard as it can be and as troubling as it might be for their families, I can't even imagine what that must be like to be in that particular situation, to feel like you need that. But that aside, those opinions aside, and however you feel about that, when older sibling, I am mama bear when it comes to my people. I don't care if you're Allie all the way out in England, Sammy out in Georgia, or sibling right across the hallway from my room. I will fight for you. And I was pissed, but she would not let me say a thing. And she could see me. She's like, no. She would just, when he wouldn't look at her, she would just kind of shake her head like, no. And finally, I went over her and I said, no. I said, she has chronic pain. And he looks at her again and says, well, I'm still not giving you any drugs. And I'm like, she's not asking for any. She's asking for antibiotics. I'm all, are you not listening? And of course, siblings just like this, just, because she wanted to make sure she got the antibiotics. But I think the nurse might have been listening to all this, because when they came in after this doctor left, they were very empathetic to her. And they're like, well, the doctor wrote your prescription, but he treated her like dirt. He treated her like trash. And I don't care what a human being is going through when it comes to addictions, they should not be treated like trash. I know it's hard, and I've never had to deal with that in my direct personal experience. I know people who have, and I get how sometimes you have to walk away from them because it's the only way they're going to get better or not get better. But when it's happening right in front of me to somebody who is not drug seeking, I was angry. I was angry. And then here's the thing. He goes across, and these are just curtain rooms, okay? He goes across, and I can peek in, and it's an older couple, nicely dressed, blah, blah, blah. And she's all, oh, yeah, my rheumatoid arthritis is flaring up. Oh, well, let me give you some painkillers for that. Really? I am sure they give you painkillers for that. My dad has a rheumatoid arthritis. He wasn't given pain meds. He was given a specific drug to help him. He wasn't given breakthrough meds. She could have been a drug seeker. But because her outer appearance differed from siblings, he treated her kinder and nicer. So, just as a point, before I get to my actual point of telling you this story, um, I did go up the chain at the hospital. And it turns out that this particular hospital at the time, they're not owned by this other company anymore. They're owned by UC Irvine now. So it's the college research facility, which is also where they train the doctors. So I feel a little better about that, although she will not go there. She will make me take her 5 miles away to a different hospital, because she will not go to the one that is literally a quarter of a mile from our house, because of how poorly they've treated her. And I don't blame her. And I did go up the chain, and I got all the way to the top, and I complained. And it turns out they had rotating visiting doctors. But I told him what I thought, and I told him, I said, your bedside manner just blows. And he just kind of blew me off like, whatever. And the reason I'm sharing that is because it inspired me to do something for a sibling. I made her a 5x7 card of what RSD is. Now, it's called chronic regional pain syndrome now, but for her, she's had it. She was diagnosed in 1979, I believe. She went into remission, had surgery about 19 years ago, and it came back, and it still has not gone back into remission. Um, so she has RSD or CRPS, chronic regional pain syndrome. So I made her a card, and she loves it because it explains everything. It explains how, don't just go in for a hug with her. Ask her first, because she might be sensitive to the touch. And I remember when I met somebody, a friend of mine now, I met her at Laura's pain management doctor. I told her, I said, oh my God, can I hug you? And she's like, oh yeah. She's like, you didn't need to ask. I said, no, I do, because I know where we're at. And she looked at me and she literally choked up. And she's like, nobody ever asked that. And I said, well, my sister's here. Of course, Laura walks out, and she's blonde hair and blue eye. And they look at me like, and I'm like, she's like my soul sister. So, although baby sibling, who I always talk about, uh, blondish, sandy blondish hair, blue eyes, full-blooded cousin. That's right. So, anyways, that was my story. Maybe you can make a card of some sort, and just let people see it. I mean, she just keeps it in her purse. She keeps a bunch of them in her purse, and she keeps, I should laminate one of them, and she just lets people read it, because, a lot of times they just don't understand. So, yeah, Sammy, she says, that's all bullshit. You can't judge an addict by their look. Exactly. 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 But yeah, you can see how, I mean, this is like probably 7 or 8 years ago, and I'm still angry about it, because they hurt her. She felt, sibling also has a dinged up mental health, as I've shared before. That upended her the whole weekend. That's all she thought about. So, is that how I look? Am I really? She started second guessing everything about her, which is the other reason why I made that card, because I'm just like, I had to spend the entire weekend trying to tell her that it wasn't her fault, that this guy was just a dick. So anyways, let's get to the card. So, the sanctuary. The sanctuary. Ooh, that's really pretty. I love these Dragon Oracle cards. Like I said, next Friday we'll get back to. I think next Friday, we're gonna do Oracle Friday because I'll be home and I'll have my expense of cards. So, oh, see, Allie says doctors over here don't give breakthrough meds. You just have to suffer. The only way to get breakthrough meds here is to have a pain management doctor. So, and I don't know if that's every state is kind of different because we do have some Dr. Feelgoods out here. But in California, you have to have a pain management doctor in order to get breakthrough meds. And they'll always ask her, well, do you need any more? No. And they're all, are you in taking these? And they're all like, no. And I said, I have to literally convince her if it's that bad to take a breakthrough med. And I won't push her. I'll just say, you know what? Just, try. So, oh, we'll see. Good. I'm glad that you were able to get one. Yeah. So, just don't judge it. I think we all know this, but it just falls under don't judge a book by its cover. I mean, you don't know what someone's going through, right? I mean, Allie, I see you. You're fun loving. I would have never guessed that you had fibro or that you had problems with family. I think we all have problems with family, right? We all have those people in our family that just kind of really they give you a run for your money. They give you a run for your money. But sometimes if you confront them, it can bear good fruit. So I would think about that. Think about if you think there's a way, the best way to talk to your son about it, and just be adamant. Just put your foot down. Sometimes that's what kids need, even if they're adults. You know, like I've had to do that sometimes with people. I mean, I've had it done to me. I mean, I don't care what anybody says, right? When you have a parent, you are always going to be the kid. So, anyways, the sanctuary. Every dragon needs its cave, just as you need your own haven, a holy place created just for your sanctuary. If you don't have one, it's time to create it. If you already have a retreat, go to it now. Take the time to recuperate and replenish your emotional, mental, and physical reserves. Indulge in your treasures. Paint, rest, listen to music, soothe, read, or nap. Nap. Now is the time to gently fold your wings inward and let yourself be unfettered from the world's concerns. I'm going to tie that into today's show. If you had to deal with confidence vampires, go to your retreat and recoup, just like Sibling had to. So, like I said, it took me the whole weekend to get her mind straight after that dumb doctor, but she got there, and I think it was because I had to tell her he's an idiot. He's an idiot. He's stupid. He doesn't understand. This is a person that doesn't understand chronic pain. You know that you have a weird disease when you find people who know about it and you get excited about it, because most doctors don't. Like, she'll just be like, oh, you know about it? Oh, yeah, I studied it. And she's like, really? And I'm not talking about her pain management doctor. I'm talking about other doctors. Like, really? And it's like, yeah. Or, like I ask my cousins, because I have a lot of cousins that are nurses, and I try to spread awareness with them about RSD. And even my cousin Carrie, she's like, oh yeah. She's like, oh, Laura. Yeah. She's like, Laura has it? I'm like, you know what it is? And she's like, oh yeah. And I said, you got to tell Laura. And she's like, really? And I'm like, yeah. Because I said, she'll love you forever. And it's true. She would. So, yeah, just take everything I've said today. I know we've talked about a lot, and I'm really grateful because I know the show kind of went all over the place, and we had a visit from Pajama Dad, but that's what I'm going to call him, Pajama Dad. So because he's in his jammies, but so yeah, we had a visit from Pajama Dad, but yeah, that's the fun part about live. You just never know what's going to happen. But I am appreciative of you, Sammy, Muddy. Thank you for coming on. Allie, thank you for coming on and sharing. And thank you both for being so open and sharing. I love you both for that. And well, I love you both anyways. So anyways, one of these days I'm going to have to find a way to get all my people into one room so I can hug each and every one of you, because wow. well, a lot of Sammys and my friends are either on the East Coast or, you know, in overseas. So, just got to grab them and come over and give you all a hug. So, anyways, I hope everybody has a wonderful, wonderful weekend. Please, 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 please take care of yourselves. Okay, we are going to talk about menopause. Actually, no, we're going to talk about menopause on Monday, but we're going to talk about a lot of things when it comes to the women. We're going to talk about periods. We're going to talk about menopause, and we're going to talk about people who get all freaking judgy about some of the things. And I don't want to share what, but it was something I was laying in bed and, for the 4 days I thought I was menopausing. And I'm going to try to make it as humorous as I can, but also pretty, pretty right out there and in your face. Cause, I get pretty tired of judgmental people, and I think it's starting to show. So I'll be that. Who's the lady on the card? Maxine. I feel like Maxine now. But I had an Auntie Maxine. So, that could be my alter ego, Maxine Marie. But anyways, so yeah, anyways, have a great day, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful weekend. Allie, Sammy, love, 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 love you both. Thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for having the conversation with me. Thanks for the special appearance by Pajama Dad. And yeah, so stand up for yourselves. Stand up for yourselves. And if you need an ear, I'm here. All right, I'm here. So have a great and safe weekend, everybody. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you back here on Monday, 8:30 a.m. Pacific Time, Facebook Live. All lives are public under Shelly Marie Lucas, and as you know, you can find me across the board on Shelly Marie on social media. Same initials almost. So have a great day, everybody. Thank you for watching.